my name is Jacqueline Gallant. I'm a lead instructor trainer for Merrithew, and I'm also a physiotherapist. Today, I'd like to introduce you to two exercises that I'm using with the reformer, on which I've added a map converter and a vertical frame. When I'm using the vertical frame and the map converter on my reformer, it opens up more opportunity of exercise, so I have more option to exercise my clients in the rehab context. The exercise today is called the Scapular Isolation, using the push-through bars with the springs from below and the springs from above. These exercises I like doing with my clients after they had a surgery. So it could be a surgery of a total shoulder replacement, a rotator cuff, or could be from an impingement, or even like a Bankar surgery. I also use these exercises for my post-fracture of the shoulder area. But it's also an exercise I'll be using for my neck and my thoracic spine clients. And you will see as I'm doing the exercise later that I'm going to be in the supine position, which is going to be maintaining my spine, my cervical spine, into a neutral position. So no movement will happen into the spine, but the movement will going to be more localized into the scapulothoracic area. So the muscle that are going to attach to the cervical spines often goes and attach also, a lot of them, onto the scapula. So it's going to be helping to stabilize the cervical and the thoracic spine area. So even if I'm working with client that had more or into more in an acute stage of cervical or even like a thoracic injury, it's going to be good because I'll be able to start focusing on the stability of the neck in the thoracic area without having movements happening into the cervical spine. So the exercises that I'm doing, so the two exercises also have different other advantage. So if I'm using the push-through bars with the springs attached from below, I'm going to have more focus on the protraction movement, which is going to be helping to make more focus onto the serratus anterior to help me to glide more my scapula onto my rib cage. It's also going to help me to maintain a better position of the scapula. So if you have a client that has more of a tendency of a winging scapula, it's going to help to concentrate and focus onto those muscles to maintain the scapula onto the rib cage. It's also going to prepare your shoulder girdle to any of the push tasks that you have, push task activities. If I'm using the push-through bars with the springs attached above, it's going to make more focus on the retractors. So your rhomboids, your trapezius. So it's going to help to maintain a better stability also onto the scapular area. And it will also prepare your shoulder to any of the pulling task activity that you may have in your days. So as I'm going to start the demonstration, I'm going to start with the springs attached from below. Important thing is always the safety as you're using any of the equipment or any of the exercise you're going to use with your clients. So as I'm using the springs from below, you want to make sure that you're going to use your safety chain. So that's going to be the first thing you want to put on. And I'm going to use the springs from below. I always use the springs with the vinyl cover, so it's not going to tear apart the bed of my reformer. If I'm using one spring, I usually will put the springs on the same side that I'm using the safety chain. If I want to use the second springs, I'm going to put it onto the other high hook on the other side of my bar. So for safety, when I'm using the exercise with any of my clients, I always want to make sure that I'm staying on the side of the machine, of the reformer, but I'm always going to keep one hand very close and always ready to help my clients if they need it. So if they let go of the bar, so I'm always able to help them. Now, the other thing about the safety when you're having them to lay down on their back is to make sure that they don't hit their head onto the bar. So I have them to lay down on the bed, and usually as a therapist, I'm always going to put my hand onto their head to make sure that when they go down, they're not hitting the bar. When you get onto the position, you want to make sure that you are onto your back. You want to position your body into the position that's proper for your clients. So as you're going to do any of the rehab course, you're going to learn some of the positioning for your lumbar area. So you're going to go with the position that's needed for your clients. The position of your arms now, you're going to want to get all the way up with your hands, so having extension in the elbows. And your hand's going to be directly on top of your shoulder, so you're going to be facilitating that position. As I'm using a vertical frame with the push-through bars, the advantage of this is that with my hands onto the bar is going to create a closed kinetic chain. And this way, it's easier for me to get the good stability and using the stability muscles, because I have a better proprioception because of the closed kinetic chain. The other option the other advantage of the vertical frame is I'm using the spring, so it's giving me some of that resistance. So I can use one spring or two springs. So for some clients, going with just the one spring to get some of the feeling of movement is enough at the beginning. When you get better and you want to get more of the strand part of the exercise, you can use the two springs tension. Now, the other thing about this position is I'm on my back, so I'm in a supine position. So when I'm going to be working with my scapula is going to be well positioned and well stabilized, because the scapula is now positioned between the bed and my rib cage. So there's not a lot of place that my scapula can go, because it's kind of in a sandwich stability, so between bed and the rib cage. So it's going to be moving directly between these two surfaces. Now, the other thing that you have to be careful about is when you're doing the movement, you want to make sure that you're keeping a loose grip onto the bar, so that you're keeping a good hand and wrist position, so a neutral position, which is more an ergonomic position, about like a 30-degree of wrist extension, to make sure that you are into your neutral position at the wrist. So if I'm doing that first exercise with the springs from below, I'm going to have more focus on my serratus anterior. As I'm going to breathe in, I'm going to press into protraction and return as I breathe out to a neutral position. I can also go with the retraction. So going in retraction as I breathe in, back into neutral as I breathe out. Or I can do a full range of motion, starting going into that protraction as I breathe in, come back, neutral, retract as I breathe out. Breathe in all the way, passing through that neutral, going neutral, retract on the breathe out. As I said earlier, I can start using one spring at the beginning and increase the tension. The other option that you can have will also be to use one arm. As I'm using one arm, so I usually will put just one springs. When I use one arm, what you want to be more careful now is going to be that you're going to bring some rotational challenge into your body. So I can have my arms here or my arms by my side, and now I'm going to get the movements happening with just one scapular area. So what you want to be careful with this movement is that your body is not rotating. So you want to focus the movement only onto your scapular area. As I'm doing any of these exercises going towards that protraction, you want to make sure that the movement is happening only into your scapular thoracic area. So as I'm going into protraction, you don't want to get a protraction and rounded thoracic and having the head going more towards that retraction position. This is wrong, and what's going to happen is going to be creating more shearing force between your vertebrae, and it's also going to increase the tension between your facet and increase tension into your disc area in your cervical area. So make sure that you always position the client to a neutral position in your cervical spine, but yet you are keeping that position of neutral spine during the whole movement so that you're not creating more tension in the cervical spine. So these are the exercises with the springs from below. If I'm doing the springs from above now, every time you're going to remove the springs again, so you want to get the springs off, and the last portion you're going to take off is going to be your safety chain. Now, as I'm going to use the springs from above, again, I can use one spring or I can use two springs. So very often I'll be starting with the one spring to see if they are able to stabilize, if they have the strength to do it. However, for some clients, having one spring is going to bring them a little bit too far forward at the beginning because they cannot stabilize. So maybe for some of your clients, the two springs might be easier to start with. So from here again, so you're going to be laying down, and you want to make sure again as a therapist that you're going to keep your hands on the bar as they're going to do the exercise. I'm getting onto my back again, into the neutral position of my spine. My hands are just above my shoulder, and I can do it with two spring, one spring, the two hands or one hand again. And the movement, I'm going into retraction, breathe in, get to neutral as I breathe out. And I can go towards that protraction, breathe in, back to neutral. Again, I can do the full range of motion. And again, you want to make sure that you're keeping the whole neutral spine into your lumbar, into your thoracic, and into your neck area. Now, the other thing that you can play with is the position of your hands. So when I have my hands facing away from me, it's going to have more focus on my pronators of the forearms and also my internal rotators of my shoulder. If I bring my hands facing me, I'm going to get more focus on the supinators and more focus on the external rotators. So again, it depends on what you need to focus for your clients that you're treating. So when you let go, so you want to make sure as a therapist, so you're going to guide them and help them to get the bar all the way up so that they don't come up and let go of the bar, and you want to make sure that they don't hit their head as they come up. So these exercises are the exercises I'm using a lot, like I say, for my shoulders, my neck, and my thoracic area. So I hope you enjoyed the demonstration of today. So this was the part one. So I'm going to get with you for two more to show you some other exercise when using the reformer, map converter, and the vertical frame. So see you again.